Hey everybody, it's Anthony Parrilli with the Billion Bet Podcast, and today we have Jim Riley on.
Anthony, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on today, Jim.
That intro was a little anticlimactic there, bud.
Well, hey Jim, why don't you start off by introducing yourself a little bit?
Hey, Anthony. Yeah, thanks for having me here. Jim Riley here, author of Freedom to Say Yes book, podcast host, business consultant, racer extraordinaire. Used to race the Baja 1000 races for Ford Motor Company, and currently living in Montana on a small ranch. I do some business consulting up here, and we raise some cattle and getting ready to make some really neat announcements about some Wagyu beef being available for purchase. So,
Oh
project
yeah,
I've been working on for a while. So, pretty excited about that.
and is this coming out of your own ranch?
Well, so the way that I work my cattle business up here is we raise cattle. We raise a very small amount. It's more of a hobby, but I partner with Montana ranchers and introduce them to customers or clients so that we have more of a reach. And just signed up with a new wonderful partner yesterday. So no, can't announce everything formally, but keep an eye out on my Instagram, Jim Riley, Montana, for what's happening there and what we're going to be doing. And I'll tell you that we'll be able to ship Wagyu beef around the country from Montana.
That's incredible. I will definitely be a purchaser of that.
Yeah, I took home a whole bunch last night and I had two great beef Wagyu meals in a row for dinner and for breakfast.
What did you make?
Last night we made burgers, and then this morning I just fried some up with some rice. Just keep the protein up. I like to run that 75 hard program. I'm not on it right now, but I try to maintain a diet. So good protein intake with a little bit of carbs.
Is that what you mainly look for in your diets?
Right now, yeah, if I can keep my protein high, keep my weight right where I want it to be.
You like rice? What kind of
I,
rice?
I eat all rice, bud.
Really?
It doesn't really matter. I'm not one of those. I'm going to cut something out. I'm just going to whatever we have in the kitchen.
I got you. I'm not a big rice guy, honestly. I'll more so go for pasta.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I got kids, man. Kids like pasta or rice, one or the other with butter.
Oh yeah. And hey, I know so we originally met over in New Jersey at one of Keaton's events, and you talked to me briefly about the Baja 1000. How did you get involved in that? How long were you racing? What kind of sparked your interest in racing?
Yeah, good question. And just like my book, The Freedom to Say Yes, I've been known to say yes on more than one occasion to doing things. And when I turned 40, I had 40 goals that I wanted to accomplish. And I happened to see this movie called Dust to Glory, and it was a movie about racing the Baja 1000 in the trophy truck class and then some other classes. And I was just so fascinated by it. And brought back some memories from when I was a kid. My dad, who was a sheriff back in the late 60s, early 70s, would pre-run the Baja 1000 course. Last time he did, I think it was in 1972. And he'd bring back pictures and souvenirs from the Baja 1000 course. And I always remembered that. So when I saw this movie, I'm like, you know what? That's something I want to do as part of my 40-year-old birthday challenge, right? And without even trying, I was the vice president of Kettle One Vodka at the time. And the owner called me, says, Jim, I met this great guy down at the beach club. He says, can you take him some Kettle One? I said, well, what's his name? He says, Cameron Steele. I said, that name rings a bell. I couldn't remember why. So I asked my other buddy, who's an off-road race enthusiast. I said, do you know who this guy is? He goes, yeah, he was in the movie we just saw. I'm like, oh, shit. So,
Oh,
I met up with Cameron, uh, took the vodka to him, and we got along. I said, hey, I want to go race with you guys. What do I got to do to
okay.
to watch or whatever? He goes, oh, just come down. We're all family. Come down to the next race. Well, what wound up happening, Anthony, is he called me a couple weeks later. He goes, hey, there's a trophy truck that seats two passengers, and you can pay to ride in the San Felipe 250, but it's
Okay.
$2,500. I said, tell him I'm in. Now all of a
Yeah.
sudden I got a seat to go race in a race. I don't know. I hardly know anything about the whole deal, right?
Okay.
And so I called the driver's name is Pistol Pete Soren. And unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago in San Felipe racing. And I talked to Pete. I said, look, I got the money. I'm going to pay you. I said, but can I get a sponsor to cover my costs? He goes, you do whatever you want. I said, well, I'll need to put a sticker on the car. He goes, I don't care. Just pay the money. Right.
Okay.
Typical racer. So I was really close with Smartwater at the time. And they said yes to sponsoring me to go race the race. And we built some brochures and all kinds of cool stuff for the race, promoting Smartwater and me racing in Pistol Pete's truck. Well, we raced. We made it about 90 miles, and I'll say this now, thank God, because I was scared shitless, and but it was incredible, and I was hooked. And we got back from Mexico, and Cameron calls me. He's like, "Hey, we got to meet." And he kind of had this tone like I was in trouble or something. So I go down and meet him at the beach club, and he says, "Hey, I thought you were my guy." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean by that?"
Yeah.
Like we hardly have a relationship. He goes, well, I thought you were going to help us race and come hang out with us. I said, well, yeah, sure. Why not? He goes, well, you did all this stuff for Pete. Can you do that for me? I said, of course I can. I'm in marketing.
Yeah.
So we struck a deal where I helped manage his sponsorships. And in
Okay.
exchange for that, I got to be the navigator for his race truck for a certain amount of miles per race, as
Okay.
well as I got a cut in the sponsorship fees. And so what that allowed me to do is go racing, learn about it, make some money, and build relationships with sponsors. And we did that for almost 2 years. And this is one of those things. And a lot of friends at the time thought, oh, well, if Jim can do it, I can do it. I even had a brother that thought, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. It takes time to learn how to race.
Yeah.
And spending almost 2 years in the passenger seat, I learned a lot about racing.
Okay.
So I'd earned enough money that I bought a race truck, a brand new trophy light race truck, which is a 4 cylinder, similar to a trophy truck in terms of, capabilities, but on a smaller scale. And I went out and raced that thing, put my own team together. At this point, I owned my tequila company, Azuña Tequila, and we raced. I had a terrible race. I rolled the car, got it back over, raced some more. I think I came second to last or something. But I met the team that had won the championship at that race. And unfortunately for them, they were running out of funds, and we struck up a deal. They like tequila. I like to race. We struck up a deal where we would race the following season together. So they would drive, I'd drive. They teach me how to drive the car that I bought. And we went on to win a championship that year. It was awesome in the trophy light. And we broke all kinds of records. We were the first trophy light truck to finish the longest race in North America, which is Vegas to Reno, over 500 miles in the dirt. And then we went on to win the Baja 1000 for the first time in a trophy light truck, which took us 31 hours.
31. How long did the 500-mile race from Reno to Las Vegas take?
I think we were in that car for 28 hours. It
Wow.
was unbelievable. We had every problem you can imagine, but we finished, and we finished in time, and we finished ahead of all of our other competitors in that class. And that class had tried to finish that race, I want to say 2 years in a row, and never was able to finish. So we were the first one to finish that race in that particular truck. Went on to win the Baja 1000, and then I got the call from General Tire saying they wanted to sponsor me.
Okay.
So the following year we went on, we won another championship. We won almost every race we entered. And then I built, with the manufacturer out of Arizona, I built what we called a spec trophy truck, which is a lot like a NASCAR for the dirt.
Okay.
Big V8 motor. We used a Chevy LS3, and we competed. We started the class. So the first race we competed against ourselves. Obviously finished that race and won. But we built a new class. It's one of the fastest growing classes now in off-road racing, probably one of the more popular ones, probably second to trophy trucks themselves. And we won a lot of races there. And I raced for Ford Motor Company at the time, Lucas Oil, Rugged Radios, a lot of big companies, including General Tire still, which is owned by Continental Tire, which most people realize that brand. And yeah, so overall, I was in off-road racing for about 13 and a half years. So it was pretty spectacular. It was a great run. We won every race there could be to win, except for the Mint 400. And I was almost in the winner's circle for that race. And we were on the top of the mountain coming down the last 15 miles, way ahead of the competitors. My team was already headed to the finish line to congratulate us. And I broke the rear end gear, and we were stuck on top of the
Oh,
mountain.
that'll take you out.
Oh, we raced all day. We raced our hearts out, all to break while we were in first place.
Are those
15
four-wheel
miles from
drive?
2-wheel drive.
Oh, so there's
2-wheel
nothing. There's
drive.
nothing you can do then.
Oh no, we luckily There's like snow on the ground. We pull over, got up to the side of the road. These guys were up there on the top of the mountain. They had a campfire and food and stuff. So we sat around and drank a pity beer with them and ate some food and waited for the cavalry to come pick us up in the middle of nowhere. So it was really unfortunate, but we had a great time. I also went on to race the Nora Vintage 1000, which is a vintage race for the Baja
Okay.
1000. And the idea is that you race vintage cars. So I raced a 71 Chevy Nova and won 2 years in a row in that class. Even hosted Dave Despain. He was from the Speed Channel. He's an MC there. He raced with me one time. Great opportunity to spend some time with him. And then I raced a 57 Chevy that was a championship race car in the 70s and won it in that. So lots of fun in the dirt, man.
And did this Chevy Nova have like off-road suspension? Was it lifted?
Well, it was lifted, and I would say it had off-road suspension, but it was technology from the 70s. Didn't work worth a shit. It had 21 shocks, and I think only the springs really worked. There's some great photos of it off, online and stuff like that. We were featured in Hot Rod magazine on several occasions, Speed Channel, all kinds of cool stuff. And but yeah, it looked good, but it didn't ride very well.
That's like anything that's old, really.
Yeah, but nothing like a big old V8 with loud pipes.
Yeah, those are exhilarating to say the
That,
least, and
that's
there's
right.
there's no emissions there.
Nope, good times.
Really let it scream. So then, with these really long races, do you have a crew following you the whole time to provide support, or how does that go?
Yeah, we do have a crew that supported us, 16 guys, and they rotate throughout the years. I mean, some guys come and go. It's all voluntary.
Okay.
What we always did is made sure they had lots of swag from our sponsors. I remember every year because Creed sunglasses was one of our sponsors, and they just dropped 50 or 60 pairs of sunglasses. So the guys love getting that. We got Oakley backpacks that everybody receive, and all kinds of cool stuff from other sponsors. But yeah, all voluntary. And what they do is they bunny hop the race course. So just think of it, 100 miles in a straight line. Car starts with a full tank of gas. We could make it 90 miles. Well, they've already gone the 90 miles ahead of us and wait for us. And then we fuel up there. While they're waiting, another small crew bunny hops them and gets to the next 90 miles section, right? So
Oh.
you're bunny hopping your chase team is what we call them, ready with anything, parts, fuel, brakes, tires, etc., anything we need. So they bunny hop down the course. Sometimes you can have three chase teams bunny hop you. So that you're really ahead of the game because if you get there in the race car and your crew's not there, you're screwed, or if they don't have something you need. So, but yeah, they're a critical component to winning a race.
What's the craziest repair you've ever had on the side of the road?
Well, it's an easy one because it was not an easy repair. It was an easy story to tell you because it was featured in Hot Rod magazine, 7 pages of story actually. We were racing the vintage Baja 1000, which is a 5-day race,
Okay.
and it's broken out by day by sections. So you can fail a section, but you can still get back in the race. So we had left on day 2 out of Bay of LA, Bahia de Los Angeles down in Baja. We left out of there and we were in between. That's on the eastern coast, line Cia Cortez. We were heading to the Pacific. And about 3/4 of the way there, we blew a motor. And oddly enough, I was with the editor of Hot Rod magazine, Alana
Okay.
Scher. And she says, Jim, we're screwed. We're in the middle of nowhere, right? This guy in this Mitsubishi with his wife pulls up. They're out there doing scenery tours, right? This is literally the middle of nowhere. They're out from Canada, cruising around in the middle of the desert, taking photos. He's like, "You need help?" I'm like, "Nope, don't need any help." So he pulls off the side of the road, and just sits there like watching us taking photos. Ilana's like, "I think we're gonna need help." So we'd blown the motor, and he wound up dragging us out of there with the tow strap, probably 25 miles, and it felt like he was in his own race, trying to get us out of there as fast as we could. Well, I hopped on the sat phone and called my chase team, which were waiting for us at the highway. I said, "This is what the deal is. We'll talk to you guys when we get there." Now, my team knows me. I never quit. I will not quit. I will keep going until we can no longer go legally in the race parameters. So by the time we got to the highway a few hours later, they said, "Hey, our next stop is in Laredo.
Okay.
We found somebody that has a motor in Laredo that we'll buy from them, and we'll swap the motor out." So,
All right.
so we hauled the car down there on a trailer after taking photos with all these kids and fans that were waiting for us. Haul the truck down there on the trailer or the car. And we get to the place where they said the motor was, and the guy's like, "Oh no, we don't have a motor. Sorry, so sorry. Like we
What?
misunderstood." Right? Here we are, and that was where the next day was going to start. Was in Laredo, and overhearing the conversation was a security guard. And he when they were done talking, he walks over to my guys. He says, "Hey, I couldn't help it over here. You guys need a motor." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I have a 1987 Chevy Silverado. That motor should fit in your race car."
Yeah.
And my
Definitely.
guys are like, "Well, how much?" And he's like, $1,300. And they're like, "Done." So we buy this Chevy Silverado from truck, the whole thing from this guy. And he goes, "Oh, my buddy has a garage that you can use." So we rented the garage for $50. We bought the truck for $1,300. We negotiated a $300 discount if we brought the carburetor back for him and gave it to
Deal.
him on the way home, right? So we take all this stuff over to this guy's garage. Now we're going to burn the day because it's not going to be an easy one. So we're going to lose day 4 of the race, but there's still a day 5, and we'd race the first 3. So we're not out of it yet.
Okay.
So we start doing the transition, and man, let me tell you, those guys, my team worked their tails off. And the locals came out. There was like a little audience of locals watching us do the motor swap. And then somebody says, "Who's hungry?" Right. And so 2 of the locals go down to the ocean, and they picked up 2 like 5-gallon buckets of fresh clams. And then
Okay.
I sent my guys to go buy a bunch of tacos. So here we are, shucking clams, eating tacos, from the local taco stand, drinking beer, swapping out motors, and just having a great
Wow.
time. We got the motor swap, got it running, and then we had to haul it down to La Paz because that was the next stop. And the last day was La Paz to Cabo. So we got the vehicle down to La Paz in time to race it from La Paz to Cabo. Now, we didn't get first, obviously, but we did finish the race, and we did get the points for that and the accolades. But we got one of the best stories in Hot Rod Magazine ever. The title was called "Wrecking and Racing," or "Racing and Wrecking a '57 Chevy in the Baja Desert." Right. So it was great. And by the way, we on the way home, we dropped that carburetor off. Celebrated with our new friends from the garage up there in Laredo, and kept on going. I guarantee those guys will take me in their home anytime I drive by there. So
That's
that was probably the
awesome.
best motor story.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And how did you go about getting all these sponsorships?
Yeah, good. I get asked that question a lot because we had probably 14 sponsors for the team, and I was one of I would say, without knowing everybody else's numbers, probably one of the top 10, maybe even top 5 sponsored drivers. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean I was the top 5 driver of all these guys. What I mean is that we had some of the most attention from sponsors, and actually received real cash from them to do the job. And really, what it comes down to, I think most people don't realize this. They think, "Oh, I got a race car, I'll get sponsors," or I'm going to do this, I'll get sponsors. Sponsors, just like any other good business, they're looking for the numbers.
Yeah.
They want to know how many eyes and ears they're going to get from their investment in your team. So in our case, our value as a team in media value was $1.2 million a year. Okay. So I had tangible evidence that if they were to sponsor us for any amount of money, that they would receive back $1.2 million in sponsorship value. And the way that works is, you look at, for the year, your paid ads or your accolades, or where the media can find you. So as an example, every impression like on Instagram or Facebook might be worth a penny or 10 cents, right? But when you look at 7 pages of Hot Rod Magazine with your photo and a story, photos and your story for 7 pages, each page in Hot Rod Magazine, I think at the time, was worth $19,000 if you were going to spend that money to buy an ad in that magazine, right? So
Okay.
all of a sudden, 7-page article, that's $140,000 worth of ad space that you've just brought value to, right? I got a lot of TV coverage, a lot of radio coverage. The company that I own, the tequila company, we ran ads in different publications. So did the other sponsors. So all of a sudden, it kind of snowballs. And if you can pull together all your numbers, your eyes and ears, right, and present that to sponsors in a way that they can see the value for their money, how they can 10x it, typically they'll say yes.
I see. That's incredible.
And I'll say one more thing. You have to not only deliver on the marketing, but you have to show up to every race. If you've committed to them that, I'm going to do 9 races a year, and that's what I did, you need to be at every race. There's no excuses for you not being at the race.
Okay.
Okay. Even if you're not winning, you're still able to deliver the eyeballs through your marketing and ad spend and all those other things. Right. So it's critical to know that you just don't take the sponsorship and not deliver on everything, including showing up to every race.
And who was your first sponsor?
First sponsor was General Tires. Yeah, they came to us after we won the championship the first year, and they said, we want your team. And we had a great relationship with those guys the entire time I raced.
And did they, were you actively marketing, trying to acquire any sponsors, or were you doing marketing to build the following on your team at that point, or were you just focused on winning races?
Well, all of it, right? So I was a team owner and driver.
Okay.
So my goal was to secure sponsorships, put together the marketing proposals every year, make sure we had all those friends aligned, right?
Okay.
So that we can not only perform, but have the tools to perform and go win, and then get in the car and drive. But really, driving was the last thing I worried about until, day before races, right? Up until that, I relied on my team manager to make sure the vehicle was ready and had all the parts. But, part of being a team owner, you got to secure hotel rooms and meals and
Yeah.
resources and parts and, all that other stuff. It's just like running a business. It's funny. I've been watching the Netflix series Formula One racing. I think
Hmm.
they had 5 seasons. And if you haven't seen that, what a great series to watch on Netflix
Okay.
is the F1 story. But, and that's $100 million teams plus
Yeah.
plus. And, same thing there. Team managers got to find sponsors, got to make sure you're in front of the camera, do all these things. Doesn't come easy. And I'll tell you, my last big sponsor, through a lot of effort, it took all those 13 years as a sole team owner. The last race I did officially was with Monster Energy. So it was kind of like the culmination of my career to be able to race with Monster Energy.
That's incredible. How
Yeah.
was that experience?
It's great, man. They come out with a full TV crew, and they're in your face from start to finish. Pre-race. What they did is they brought their some of their athletes over from Australia. So Cam Waters, for example, and he's their NASCAR champion out of Australia. So
Okay.
he came in, and the idea was they were going to allow a couple of their athletes. The deal we struck was a couple of their athletes would be able to race in the car for the Mint 400. So
Oh,
Cam, being a driver, he drove so it's 4 laps. He drove the first lap, and I had my navigator mechanic as his navigator for the first lap. And then I got behind the wheel and had Ferdinand, who's their top skateboard champion out of Australia. He rode with me for 100 miles. And then I turned the wheel over to Jocko, who's their X Games champion on a dirt bike. He drove for 100 miles, and then I got back in and finished the race with them. And it just was epic because of the fanfare and, being able to run the Monster colors and logo and everything was pretty cool for us. And we had a great time with it. And then they produced a 30-minute show on it. If you looked up Monster Energy Mint 400, you would find it. So just an incredible production value too.
okay. I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, it's fun.
And so when you first started racing, you were still at Kettle One Vodka. And when you finished racing, you had your own vodka brand or tequila brand.
Yeah, my tequila
My
brand.
bad.
Yep. Yep.
How did you transition between these two?
Well, good question. So in my role at Kettle One, I was offered the opportunity. So the company sold. It was $1 billion up front to Diageo. Company sold, and I had the offer to work for the new company out of New York or Miami. And because of my racing, I'd met a family down in Mexico that was producing tequila. And And the reason why is because I was in a sponsorship meeting. Believe it or not, this world gets so small so fast. I was in a sponsorship meeting with Who's Your Daddy Energy Drink with Dan Fleischman. Okay.
Okay.
And a couple of his guys, investors. And when they all left, one of the investors who lived in Newport, where I did at the time, he says, "Hey, my family owns a distillery in Mexico. Are you interested in bringing a tequila up here?" I said, "Well, what's their deal?" He says, "Well, they were producing Cabo Wabo for Sammy Hagar. And
Okay.
Sammy just sold to Campari and they've moved operations. So all of a sudden the distillery is sitting dormant." And I was
Oh.
like, "Yeah, I'll go down and meet them." Now, remember, this was a race meeting that turned into let's talk about tequila. And what I knew at the time already is that Kettle One was going to be sold or something was shaking up, right? And I needed to find an alternative. I'd already started writing a business plan to have my own brand. So I went down, met the family that owned the distillery in Amatitan, which is part of Jalisco, and spent a week down there. And we struck a deal where I would lease that property out in 5,000 acres for the next 30 years. And I went back and forth a whole bunch, spent 6 months writing a business plan and raised $5 million between my money and Bill Walton, who's an NBA All-Star, as well as Peter Jacobson, pro golfer, raised $5 million. And we launched Zuni Tequila. And I hired a whole bunch of Kettle One sales staff that were going to be out of work because of the sale. So we launched in 2007, and the rest was history. The brand now still exists, almost 15 years later, and nationwide, doing well. So I stepped away in 2017 as the CEO and executive.
Good for you. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
So transition was fun. It was risky, but it allowed me to live my dreams and do what I wanted to do.
What did that entail?
Well, the reality is not working for somebody else, and allowing me to have the give back philosophy that I've had most of my adult life, and that is doing things for others. So part of the deal that we structured with the distillery was that we'd give a portion of every liter of sales back to the local area. And in this case, we helped the schools in Amatitan through the sales of our products. So we were able to give back. And for me, not only to work for myself, but to be able to give back through a company that I started was fantastic, as well as allow the company to hire some people that might have had no work coming from Kettle One at the time. So that felt good as well. And, having partners is great. Working with people like Bill Walton and Peter Jacobson, guys that were first in class in their own sports and endeavors, and some of the investors that they brought to the table through their network just allowed me a lot of freedoms, a lot of experience and understanding on how to play around with the big boys in the big world.
That's a completely different experience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're retired. You guys moved from California out to Montana.
Yeah. So, the thing is, what you learn along the way, and I teach a lot of this in my own coaching group, which is the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, talk a lot about establishing what your values are and building your life around those values, and then taking your values and building goals from those values. I think oftentimes we build goals for ourselves. Maybe it's chase the dollar, you want to be rich, whatever that looks like. And you get there and you realize, gosh, I got all this money, but I'm not happy. And the reason why people aren't happy is because they're chasing goals without their own values taken into consideration, right? So along my career path, I've always, at least since I was 26, taken my values very seriously, and how I build that into the companies I work for, the jobs that I take, or the companies that I've built. So in 2017, my wife says, "Jim, the investors have been great for us, but you're starting to go off in a direction that really doesn't align with your values." We had two babies at the time, and spending a lot more time at home. And quite frankly, I didn't want to spend my Friday and Saturday nights in the bars slinging tequila, and living that life. And we made a decision with a lot of encouragement from my wife, Samantha, to say, "Hey, let's step away. Let's take a chance and step away and build our lives around raising our kids and continuing to give back in different ways." So what I did is I stepped away from the company. I kept my shares over there, but had a nice executive payout package and left the company. Within 2 short weeks, I started an import company importing Baja wines And what we did that for is to create a brand that could give back to the orphanages on a sustainable basis over a long period of time. So immediately jumped out of one deal into the next, but it created more giving back. And through that, I created my own podcast, which is The Answer is Yes. If you're listening and you want to hear another podcast, the answer is yes. I created that podcast, which led into business consulting and coaching, and that was made very clear to me from my own coach at the time, whom was David Meltzer. And he says, Jim, your podcast has launched you in an arena that maybe you weren't anticipating. And that is the world of coaching and consulting and being of value to others on a larger scale. And so what we did is we created a plan to do that on a larger scale and build a sustainable income around it. So I could leave California and move my family to a place that aligned with our own values. We were looking at Texas. But at the time, I was doing a lot of Spartan racing competitively. Speaking of racing, I stepped out of the race car and into Spartan racing almost overnight, and
That's awesome.
had a very successful competitive racing career in Spartan. At one point, I was third in the world for men over 50. I'd went off to Iceland for a 24-hour ultra race, which gained me that status. And my wife was actually third in the country for women 30 to 35 at the same year. So we were really on a health kick and a high from being, successful in Spartan racing. But we had raced in Montana in Big Fork over here. And the moment we landed and we're driving down the road, I could see Glacier, Whitefish Ski Resort, beautiful ranches. And on almost every corner is the 10 Commandments. And it says, Kalispell churches welcome you. I thought, I could live in a place where the church is welcoming me to be here. It was so beautiful. Lakes all over the place. And I told Samantha, we actually grabbed a realtor while we were here for the Spartan race. We spent a half day looking at properties. I said, we got to come back here and take this seriously. So within a few months, we came back with the trailer and the kids. And we committed to staying here for 10 days or until we found a home. And I laughed because Samantha says, oh, you mean just like, dream? I said, no, like literally, we're going to find a home. We're not leaving until we do. And on day 10, we put an offer in on the second house we liked. And the first one got declined. They didn't want to wait for us to sell our home back in California. Second one, they said yes. And we turned around the next day and drove home, put our house up for sale, and it was sold within 7 days. And
Wow.
believe it or not, it's within 30 days, we were packed up, heading to Montana, whole family. And interesting thing about that was the world championships for Spartan were happening. I had an injury, so I was going to do the Spartan trail race up in Lake Tahoe. And Samantha was going to race for the national championship of the U.S. in her age group. So literally, moving truck went one way. We drove the other with the kids and the dogs. The trailer, went and raced Spartan, and then we met the movie truck in Montana. So that's how we got here, and never looked back.
Good for you. That's incredible. That's what a story. Spartan racing to trophy racing. That's awesome.
Well, I hope you're sensing the theme, and that's saying yes to stuff,
Yeah.
right? You might just have a reward for doing it.
Are you still involved with the orphanages?
We are not as much as I'd like. What I've done personally is shifted some of my support and resources to the local schools here in Montana, as well as the Save the Cowboy movement, which is protecting our natural lands and farmlands here in Montana from big corporate takeovers, which is happening. The American Prairie Reserve might as well be the American Devil Reserve because they're taking up land under false conditions. So we fight them. I support the law enforcement up here quite a bit. And as you know, and some of my followers know, I'm really heavily involved in politics. So I'm helping Tanner Smith run for governor here in Montana, working closely with Matt Rosendale on some campaign trail stuff. If you watch the news cycle right now, you're seeing Matt Rosendale all over the news for being part of the 8 that kicked McCarthy out from the speakership. So I stay actively involved in giving back as often as I can. Once in a while, we'll get some money down to the orphanages, but our focus has shifted a little bit here to the hometown.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah,
And you guys are still actively trying to get those entrepreneurship classes also put in the schools, right? Or have those passed?
yeah. So we taught a full year curriculum at a private institution here, and we taught 9 through 12, and we have a beautiful curriculum that we ran through that school system, and then we offered them the curriculum to continue on if they wanted to after that year. But more importantly, what we did with that curriculum is that we've been approved by OutSchool, which is an online homeschool program. So OutSchool is pulling together, and we're working with them to put our curriculum on OutSchool so that anybody can do it in the country. So we proved it live. My partner Rod Kuntz and I, we taught 3 days a week to prove the concept that the curriculum worked, that we had success in that. And now we're doing a full-fledged online criteria. So we're in the process of making that available through OutSchool, as well as that curriculum will be able to be purchased from schools that want to utilize it and have their teachers teach it. So we're really excited about that. On an equal front, though, we're working with corporations. We've been in discussion with UPS, In-N-Out Burger out of California, for running our Young Entrepreneur Syndicate curriculum, because not only is it for entrepreneurs, but it's also for intrapreneurs, people that want to be successful in the company that they're working for. And what better places than UPS and In-N-Out Burger to be talking to, because they have great longevity with their employees. And so we teach these intrapreneur skills to them, on a corporate level. So we're hoping both of them will say yes. We've been in discussion with them for 6 months now, both of them. And, I know those big ships don't turn real fast. And so for the people that don't want to wait, we have our own coaching group called the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, and that's youngentrepreneurs.syndicate.com. And people can become a member of that. It's $99 a month. We do 4 Zoom calls, and we talk about all these entrepreneur and entrepreneur skills on every call. And the calls are an hour. So for the first 30 minutes, you get a lesson. And then for the second 30 minutes, it's open Q&A for all the members to ask anything they want. There's 3 of us coaches usually on the call, and we'll answer through them. And, the cool thing about that is it doesn't have to be on the topic. It could be on anything. If you're struggling in your business, you're like, gosh, I wish I had an answer or some third-party advice. We're there for that. And what's also great is that anybody on the call benefits from that question. And we don't have so many members. I've been in some other groups. They have so many members, like, gosh, I hope he even sees my question, let alone reads it out loud. In this case, we're able to get to all of them, and we'll go over time just to make sure we get to all of them. So like I said, it's a pretty intimate group. We've got over 40 members, but usually the calls are 15 to 20 people, which is perfect. And it allows us to give value to a lot of people at once. I do some personal coaching, and I've got some clients that I work with now on the side, but that's more in-depth, specific, on an executive level stuff that you don't really get in a group session. So a lot of coaching going on over here from the Montana home base.
Definitely. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Keeps you busy.
Yep.
For sure. And I'm glad to see you guys have had success. Lots of new people coming on. How was your event in California you did?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Putting on an event is never easy. And I have an incredible partner, Rachel Savota. She owns a marketing company out of Orange County, California. And she just crushed it, putting together all the components of a successful event, from the flowers on the tables to the custom made notepads and the handouts and all these other things. I came to the table with David Meltzer, and this is something we wanted to do for our members, but as well as, reach out to people if they wanted to, gain some additional knowledge at what we thought was a really affordable ticket. So I came to the table with David Meltzer, he's an incredible speaker. And I don't even want to tell you what his normal rate is, but it's 5 figures in the higher end of that spectrum. And so Dave said yes right away. We're friends now. He's no longer my coach. We're friends, and we collaborate on stuff when we can. So thanks to Dave for everything he's done for me. So we had Dave scheduled, and I was going to speak, and Rachel was going to speak, and my partner Rod was going to speak. And we really had a robust curriculum for the event. Well, Rod wound up having heart surgery, so he was out. It's like, okay, what are we going to do now? Rachel Savota was an awesome partner that put on this event. She was coming back from the Arte Syndicate and got to know Robert Greene, who was a speaker there with Arte, with Andy Frisella and all those guys. And Rachel says, hey, why don't I invite Robert Greene to be at our event? And I said, yeah. I said, believe it or not, I've been a fan of Robert Greene's for literally 25 years this year,
Okay.
right? So, anyways, he said yes right away. So we had David Meltzer speak, then Rachel, then myself, and we closed up with a Q&A with Robert Greene. And you asked me how the event went. I knew what I was going to get with David, and I knew what I was going to get with Rachel, but I had no idea what I was going to get from Robert Greene. And man, let me tell you, if you weren't there, you missed out on an opportunity to listen to an intellectual talk about the work that he'd done. By the way, 48 Laws of Power is on their 25th anniversary. And I have my book that I bought the year it came out. He signed it. It's in the background behind me here. It's that orange cover. Um, Robert talked about all his work, not only the stuff that he's done solo, but also his work with 50 Cent and the time he spent with 50 Cent on the road to write their book together. And so at the end of it all, Anthony, it was an incredible opportunity, not only for me, but for the people that attended and the memories that were created. And now I have a relationship with Robert Greene. He's threatening to come up here and write a book in Montana. And I said, well, you're welcome to stay at my place. So I have a feeling he's going to take me up on it. So I hope he does.
Okay.
Robert, if you're listening, man, we'd love to have you up here, even if it was just for a couple of weeks. So event was great. And we will do another next year. I'm not in the event business. We're not trying to just have these mega events with all these speakers. I want to always bring value. And time is limited because I want to be with my kids. So when we do something, we do it differently and than what most do. And I love those big events like the one that we met at in New Jersey with the Muscle and all those other great speakers. And Keaton's does a wonderful job. Sean Whalen's stuff, Arte stuff. We did a little bit more intimate and on a smaller scale because that's just who we are. I don't want to pretend to be somebody we're not.
Definitely. And so a lot of people kind of look for that specifically for a more tailored group to them because you can't help everybody ultimately because then you'll be spread too thin, really.
Well, and by the way, so Sean Whalen just had a big event. Actually, so did the Muscle. They had a big event, both of them in Utah. And we have some members in our group that attended those things, and they're members of those two groups. I said, look, I love those groups because you go, you get inspired and you get motivated. And when they come back to me in the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, that's where we do the work. When you leave those events, you're inspired. There's no doubt about it. And you're ready to go to work. Well, when you come back to us, it's like, okay, what does that work look like? Let's walk through it together. You're motivated, we're motivated, but let's put the tools into action now and let me hold you accountable because those events are so big. The guest speakers and those groups, I don't want to call them mega stars, but they've got so many people. How can they help everybody? Right. Where us on a smaller scale, literally we can take the phone calls and help people and create that desirable action item so that they succeed. We've had 5 entrepreneurs in our group this last year start businesses that are all thriving right now. Matter of fact, one of them is opening up a retail outlet today up here in Montana. So the grand opening's this afternoon. I'm so excited for her. It's in the defensible self-protection space. So anyways, we've had a lot of great people put action into play through our group.
That's incredible, and that's really where you're looking for is to see those results, see people actually doing things. Because I know so often, like even with some of my friends, for example, they'll ask me like a question or two, but it's like I say the same thing and they don't actually take action with it.
Yeah, yep. We're about the accountability. I remember as a kid going to church, and I went to Calvary Chapel in California, and Raul Reese, he's popular, he's on the radio. Raul Reese was very condemning, like, you're going to die if you don't come to Christ. I was like, oh my gosh, I better be good. Once I got my life together and I started being a good kid, I thought, well, I don't need to be yelled at every Sunday. Like I want to actually study and just be a better Christian in life. This is a good reference point. And so I changed churches. I went somewhere where I could actually do the action items, take the steps, the Bible studies, the reading, fellowship with other people and not feeling so guilty at Rawls Church. Well, business is the same way. You can go to a big event and be inspired all day in Utah, which I love that. But when you leave there, how are you going to put those principles into play? Because that motivation burns off quickly. And if you're a fan of Andy Frisella's, he talks about discipline is one of the most important things. And that's what you get from my group is we give you that discipline and that accountability week after week after week on a personal level, not amongst thousands. right? And that's what I love about the work that we're doing and our ability to help so many people through the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate.
And that's huge. I'm glad you guys are really making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, when you can see somebody's business succeeding, and then you're talking about, well, how do I, build my business up from there? Then we talk about things like sustainability and being patient. It takes time, growth, right? Getting out of the red zone into the black, or
Yeah,
so it's a process.
you got to be in the black for sure.
Yeah, it takes time though.
It does. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to wait for that initial investment to start paying itself off.
No, and so Anthony, that's one of the things that I see. It's really rampant because we get on social media and we see people successful, or at least in our minds, we think that they're successful. And I know, you know, the Andys of the world will warn you against those guys that have rented the Lamborghini for the day, or the private jet that's not theirs, right? Makes it look like they're having all the success. The reality is that's not what's going to happen. One half of 1%, maybe, if they grind it out really, really hard. The reality is that growing a business takes time, patience, energy, following your values, having a business plan, that map that will get you there, and then that consistent pursuit to succeed, right? And I still feel like the old adage is 3 to 5 years to see that success. It's not going to happen overnight. And if you're patient, you'll build a foundation. It's all about building that foundation that you can build off to have that success. And I guarantee you, if you're focused, you'll get there. All ideas are good ideas. It's just people stop believing in themselves because they don't think it's happening fast enough, and their bank account's not getting big enough, and they're not buying that Lambo. Well, neither are the other people. Focus on you, know your own truths, be patient, work your program, you'll get there.
Yeah, and that's hard sometimes. Is like you do something for a while and you think like, oh well, is it going to pay off? Is it not going to pay off? Should I invest my time in something else? Should I not? But you really just got to kind of keep going with it, and it works itself out.
Coming from the vodka space, being the former vice president of Kettle One Vodka, we watched Tito's vodka launch, and everybody thought, wow, okay, let's see what happens there. He's a very crowded market. When people started noticing them going, Tito's is the next hottest vodka, what they didn't realize is he'd already been around for 12 years. Already been around for 12 years when he really started to grow. And then over the next 5 years, from 12 to 17 years, then he exploded. Now he's one of the top vodkas in the world, coming out in a very, very crowded market. I mean, even when Kettle One launched way back in the day, there was Stoli and Absolute taking the world by storm with their marketing materials. People thought we were crazy for doing what we did. Then all of a sudden Tito's comes along 10 years later, but people don't realize all the work that goes into that. And like I said, if you have a good enough idea and you're passionate about it, it will resonate. It will just take time.
That's a very powerful message.
Well, hopefully they hear it.
I think that's a pretty good way to end the podcast today.
Well, I appreciate that. I know we went long, but you asked me to come on. I do this for a living, so was happy to share some things with your listeners. And hey, I want to wish you success on this podcast and what you're doing in business. I know we've talked a few times, and I heard what your plans were. So congratulations on following through with those things.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Right on. Well, I look forward to seeing this thing air, bud. Take care.
Thanks for coming on today, Jim. I really appreciate your time.
Yep. Pleasure.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.